All right, good afternoon, everyone. We are continuing our quest for knowledge and meaning and responsibility and happiness and productivity to know what to fix, what to do to fix the world up, and to know that we have the power to do it and to really believe it and to get enthusiastic about it. And here we go. When God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, through 3,448 years ago. So the world changed drastically. First of all, the Jews got out of Egypt. The Jews were called God's chosen people. And the Jews at Mount Sinai, they became servants of the Creator. A servant means he does exactly what the master wants. You can be a servant of somebody and do what you want. So it ends up you're only a servant for yourself. So a servant, true servant, means he does what the Creator wants. The only way you can know what the Creator wants is if the Creator tells you. And the only time in the history of the world that the Creator ever told a whole entire nation, right? In other words, told someone, and there were witnesses. And here in this case, he told everyone. All the witnesses were actually participants, told them all what he wants from the world when he gave the 10 Commandments. Okay, but the question also still remains, why? Why did God do it? What does really God care what we do? What does he care what we do? He just created us, right? Or we weren't created, we were just created by the Big Bang or something like that theory. And somehow or other the Jews, they believe, or they're pushing this amazing hoax on 300 years that, what did I say? 2,000? I don't even, what did I say in the beginning of the class? 2,448 years after the world was created, God gave the Torah. That was 3,338 years ago. God gave the Torah, right? So for 3,300, the Jews have not only been believing this thing, but they've been giving their lives for it, and everybody's been hating them for it and trying to get them to do anything possible to leave the Torah. And there's a whole religion, about 2.5 billion people that believe that God did change the Torah and that the Jews are no longer God's chosen people and they can do whatever they want to. And those 2,000, 2 billion, they rule the world. You know, they're the losers, the winners. So why don't the Jews just give in? You know, especially when Jews were living like in France and in Spain, all these super Catholic countries, and getting burned at the stake and getting this. So the answer was just to give the whole thing up. You know, you're not getting anything out of it. Wait, where's my picture? Hey, what happened to the picture? 1 minute. Something is wrong over here. Where did the picture go? 1 minute. No. Why is there no picture? What did you do with the picture? Here we go. Let's see. Let's go back to the beginning and see what's really going on over here. There's the picture. There's me. No, something happened. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Oh. All right. Never give up. What's going on over here? Everything's recording. The picture. Oh, there we go. Good. Good guess. Right. Menat showing you read, we already spoke many times as that the oiftu, that the whole accomplishment, the whole novelty of giving of the Torah is to verbinden, to unite, und vereinzigen, to join and to unite Maila mit Mata, the upper worlds with the lower worlds. Or more exactly, the Creator, who is above the upper worlds, with the creation. Far Matan Torah, before the giving of the Torah, was the Gezerah, there was a decree. So it says, Shemaim Shemaim LaHashem, as King David said, the heavens belong to God, and the earth was given to people. Right? It's in Psalm 115. Ruchnis with Gashmis, spiritual and physical, there were two different worlds, welche which haben sich nicht gekannt zusammenkommen. They couldn't come together. Right? You want to be a spiritual person, you have to be not physical. you want to be a physical person and be a successful person, you have to forget about being spiritual, or this or that. By Matan Torah, but when God gave the Torah, what their Eibishter God, the Gezerah Mevatel, God, he rescinded that decree. The Ani Amatchel, and God, he began. What do you mean he began? God, so to speak, came down. By Yered Hashem, Al Har Sinai, God came down when Hot Gegeven Eden, and he gave the Jews the power, Durachim Mitzvos, by means of doing the commandments, zu behaften und vereinigen, to join and unify the physical, the earth, with the heavens. You take a pair of physical tefillin and you put a physical tzitzit. One of the commandments that the Jewish people have, a physical shofar on Rosh Hashanah, or a physical piece of matzah on Yom Kippur, and you do a commandment with it, you do what God wants, and suddenly the physical becomes the vehicle for revealing the essence of God's will, and the ultimate of spiritual becomes manifested in the physical. That's the whole idea of the Holy Temple. The Holy Temple. In English, they call it a Holy Temple, which is sort of a misnomer. It's supposed to be a holy house. Beit HaMikdash, the house which was holy. In other words, it's a house like any other house. It's made from bricks. It has a floor to it. It has a roof. It has a ceiling. It's not made from, kryptonite or some sort of magical stones or materials or something. It's made from regular things, and it was made exactly the way God wants, and God was revealed. In other words, people would go to the Holy Temple, and they would feel that they are creations that God is creating, and they would feel tremendously lucky and empowered that God is creating me. The Rebbe, so therefore, haben the mitzvahs, therefore the commandments, from thee. Let's see, I'll learn how to do this here. Was therefore the commandments which were done by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, far Matan Torah, before the giving of the Torah, chach ze, because they, haben getan kama mitzvos. I mean, even though they did many commandments with gashmi chazakin, with physical things, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they did physical things, right? Abraham took his son to sacrifice him. He took a knife and built a fire, right? These are things which they're physical things. He used it to do a commandment with. As even it says Yaakov, he put sticks in front of the sheep in order that it would be multiplied, etc. Abraham did charity. He built himself a special hotel, and he gave people food to eat, and he said, "Now bless God." And by means of that, he advertised God. So they did use the physical world, but even though they did use the physical world, nevertheless, so if so, what do we have to have the giving of the Torah for? Then the Jews suffering in Egypt for 210 years, and all these miracles with the plagues and splitting of the sea and bread from heaven, just give it to Abraham. Abraham, in fact, he did some commandments, Abraham. Nevertheless, the commandments that Abraham did, they didn't have the power. So durch dringen, to permeate mitzer kedusha, with their holiness, the devorim gashim, the physical things, mit welche, with which the mitzvahs, the commandments, zayin and getan gemern, they did. It was Abraham, after he left his hotel that he used in order to advertise godliness, the hotel was just the same thing as any other building in the world. There was no holiness in it, which is not the case when we put on tefillin. The tefillin become holy even after they're used. As oich ze zollen veren helik. So he didn't permeate the physical world with any sort of permanent holiness that they should remain holy. Well done, because then, in the time of Abraham, is noch nit, was not yet the miglachite, the possibility. So forbidden to join holiness and then the holiness of spirituality with physical things. When did that begin? At Mount Sinai. But Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were before Mount Sinai, right? They were 400 years before Mount Sinai more. The mantra from mitzvahs, the purpose of the commandments that the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did is given be'ikr was to Moshiach, to draw down Gilui Elokus, spiritual godliness, Baruchness in the spiritual world. Hadvaso haben Yagatan, so therefore that had something to do with physical things. It's like your father, your grandfather, they invested a lot of money in and the business succeeded, but they themselves didn't have any money. They invested everything. Why did they do it? For you. Same thing, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they're called the fathers. Their hard work that they did serving God in this physical world was only just to put money in the bank, so to speak, spiritual bank, for their children. What they did was increase godliness in the spiritual worlds. Thus was to say, got done that which they had to do physical things in order to actually do it, right? Abraham actually had to actually build this temple, this hotel in the middle of the desert, and Yitzchak had to actually dig wells in the world, physical, in order to then Yaakov had to put these sticks in front of the sheep. Why did they have to deal with physical things? Is as well as because Zayzain and Gaven Mad Amirkava, it's a resh, because they were a mirkava, they were a vehicle. Like it's a chariot, a vehicle, su'el to godliness, even in their physical bodies. Then they had to do something. They had to make choices in life. According to what did they make choices in life? What was good for them? No, what God wanted. Everything they did, everything they said, everything they thought, they thought, let me do what God wants and let me avoid what God forbids. Zayzain and the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they were a zoifil battle, so given over, devoted to God by them, Zayin nitgeven farzich kain shum mitzius. They didn't have any existence in themselves, so to speak. Like a soldier. A soldier goes into war, into this, they have boot camp or whatever it is, and that prepares them to take orders. You have to take orders. You have to not think what I want to do. You have to take orders from the commander. The commander takes orders from the general, and the general takes orders from the president, who knows what, the king. All of it is taking orders. That's what makes things work. Like your heart is not a unit in its own. It does what it has to do in order to keep the body healthy. If the heart acts independently, you got problems. The same thing with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They did not act independently from God's will. That's the way a healthy world works. Because after all, we're just creations. You have to have the circulation moving. They were nothing in themselves. Punkt V, just like a right wagon, just like a wagon, a merkava, a chariot, is in zer yeder bezun bevegung, and all their conduct in every way was batal, totally surrendered to the ratzon, from the will, from Zion writer to the writer. That's all he did. This is very, very common. I mean, they're very common. That's how do you say all success is. You have a business, everybody has to do their job. You have an orchestra, everybody has to do their job. You have to play, you have to be devoted to the music, to the purpose. Well, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they realized a new purpose in the world. Namely, you could do what God wants. God, so to speak, he's the composer, he's the writer. And they're just like the chariot. Therefore, Zeravoda, their service, spiritual service of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Durach Kedumim was permeated as their ganze Metzias, their whole being. Bis das hat sich gesagt euch in a Devar Gashman, until this was expressed even in physical things. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. They personally were so devoted. First of all, they realized that there must be God. And they realized that they were created for a purpose. And they thought more and more about it. Why am I created? Why am I here? What should I do with my hands, my ears, my emotions, my thought? How can I serve the Creator? How can I do what's right, correct all the time? They thought until they came to the conclusion that there must be order, there must be a commander, there must be commandments. And they came to the conclusion on their own, and they did them. And they said, and they thought whatever God wanted. And this was expressed in their physical bodies. But nevertheless, this was still far away from the giving of the Torah. The kavana is, the intention is, however, an oiftu from the Gashmi. There has to be in physical world. One moment here, one moment. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were the fathers of Judaism because they realized there is God. They realized that God is creating the world, and that they realized that God is creating the world for a purpose, and they devoted themselves totally to this purpose, to the point where they desired nothing whatsoever for themselves, not even going to heaven, avoiding hell. They had no consideration for themselves. They only had one consideration: to do, say, think, feel what the Creator wants. Because after all, He's creating our bodies and our mouths and our minds and our hearts and our feelings. Okay. But that's not the ultimate. They were just the fathers. This only led to that's stage number one, led to the kavana. But God's intention, what they're creating the world for, was to work in the physical world. That was what Adam was supposed to have done. The Gashmi, the physical world, is given nitmer, was an ois druk from them inyan haruchni. The, the, the physical world was just an expression of the spiritual. Therefore, is demoed by the Abbas, therefore by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It wasn't so important to them, Durach Vas, for a davar gashmi, what type of physical things they used. They just wanted to express the spiritual. The physical was a secondary thing, something like a movie, right? Yeah, with a movie theater, you go to a movie theater. I don't even know if they have these things. I haven't been to a movie theater. I don't know how long anyway. So they have the movie, but you have to have the screen. But the screen is not the main thing. The main thing is the movie. Same thing with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Abraham and Jacob, they realize the main thing is the spiritual. You have to bring the spiritual, and the world is just like the screen. You just sort of show the spiritual in the world. It doesn't make any difference what you do with the world. The world itself is not the main thing. The main thing is the spirituality, the soul of the world. For instance, what Yaakov, by means of the sticks that he put in front of the sheep, Hat Mamshech, he drew down high levels of godliness, which now, Nachmatan Torah, after giving the Torah, Zayin Mamshech Torah Mitzvot Tefillin, we can do through putting on Tefillin now. And similarly with the other commandments. So Yaakov revealed you have to have physical commandments in order to shine godliness in the world, but the physical commandments were only, like we say, a screen for the spiritual. The spiritual was the main thing. The kegen, which is not like the commandments, which were after giving the Torah. After giving the Torah, Hazeh, them koach, the commandments themselves had the power to draw down holiness, oichen, the devarim gashmi, even in physical things. So in other words, before the Torah was given, only great, holy, devoted, pure people like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they could draw godliness down into the world, and the world was not the main thing. It wasn't permanent in the world. The main thing was the spirituality, and the world was just like a mirror to bounce off. And after they finished drawing the spiritual things in the world, it didn't remain, right? Just like when you finish the movie, the screen, nobody watches the screen. The screen's absolutely not. But after the giving of the Torah, suddenly they realized a whole new thing. As they're gashing that the physical alone, Zolver and Halik, will be holy. That's where our whole metaphor now breaks down, right? Let's take the metaphor a little bit more, right? In the movie theater, so you have the movie shines on the screen, and you go home, the screen is not holy anymore. But suddenly you realize, 1 second, the movie was just a bunch of lights. It was just shining. The main thing really is this real physical world. The movie wasn't really real. The screen really is real. Maybe it's not so interesting watching the screen, right? But if you think about it 1 second, to create the movie, a person can create a movie. How do you create a screen? What is a screen made of? The movie is just made of light. The screen is, of course, also, you can see the screen, but on the other hand, it's made of the whole different types of atoms, molecules, and it stays there. The godliness in the physical world, now it's hidden, we don't see it, The spiritual reveals it. But what if we would see the spirit, the godliness, and the physical world, we realize it's even higher than the spiritual worlds. How can this? Where do we see this? In the commandments. The commandments are physical items that God Himself, who He's the creator of the spiritual, told us to do. And therefore, is barov mitzvahs, the majority of the commandments, their davar agashmi, the physical thing, has to have many, how do you say, criteria. Kadei, in order, men zolkenen mitim makayim, the commandments. By Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, it wasn't so important what they used. The main thing is that who was using it was Abraham who was using it. Right? It was Abraham was using this thing. But by us, it's not so. The main thing is not so much what's being done. It has to be done by a Jew, but the commandment. But nevertheless, the commandment itself is holy. The physicality of it is holy. And everyone can do. You don't have to be holy like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Any simple Jew that does a commandment is connected, and he connects the commandment and the world to the essence of God. The koach, the power, which was given in these commandments by means of the giving of the Torah, as right in the giving of the Torah, as zeh zelen, that the commandments themselves afterwards, mamshich, can draw down kedusha, holiness, in physical things, comes from elokus, it comes from godliness, versus hecher, from mata mitmaila. It comes from an aspect of God which is above, up, and down. In other words, before the giving of the Torah, God was spiritual. When God gave the Torah, we realized God is far above the spiritual. Above. God creates the spiritual. By God, the spiritual and the physical are the same. They're just creations. Because vile air is their emissary, believable, because God is truly unlimited. He's not limited to being infinite. He can also be finite. Versus nit begrenzt, God is not limited in the Gedorim from up. God's not up or down. Therefore, Giter der Koach, God has the power. So Machaber, to join far einzigen, and unite Beidu zusammen, both of them together. Now we have to remember and keep remembering all the time that this God we're talking about, He's creating me and you. He's creating me and you. Huh? He's creating everything in the world, everything around us, the screen that we're watching, and the words that we're hearing, and everything God is creating all the time. And our souls and our life and the angels, it's all an amazing creation. All the time being created. God is not just a spiritual being, and we're here to, it's not like, Greek, what is it called? The mythology or something like that. The gods are up there and they're, playing with the humans. God, this is real for real. God is creating us. He's creating us. He's enlivening us. God is not spiritual and He's not physical. He creates the spiritual and the physical. Like we said so many times. In one way we can say that God does not exist. God creates all existence. The reality of God is totally incomprehensible. We have no way of, but on the other hand, the reason it's incomprehensible is because it's too real. It's too real to be defined. So God Himself has both of them together. This is the God that gave the Torah. From this is verstandig, it's understood as der oiftu, that the accomplishment from the commandments which we do after giving the Torah is nitblois, is not only was they bewerken, that they have an effect on the physical world, they have an effect on the physical world, like in the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, so to speak, the commandments and the Torah. Wow, that's pretty freaky over there. Let's get the picture back over there. Okay. As the Gashmis, the physical world, will be holy, nor oich, as the mitzvahs align, zainen afil hecher midreger. They come from not just that the commandments have an effect on the world, but they're two separate things. No, the commandments make as the mitzvahs, the commandments, was mehad katan, which we did before the giving of the Torah, they were limited in the level of being above. right? They were spiritual things, what Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did. They did not have the power from the essence of God. Und der Rebbe, so therefore, hat sie sich nicht gekannt, vereinzigen, they didn't have the power to limit the physical world with the spiritual. The commandments that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did, they didn't do because they were commanded. They were commandments in the sense that they were links, joined. The word mitzvah means to mitzvah, to be joined. They joined the commandments that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did, the deeds that they did, that joined them with godliness. But they weren't given by God to them. God didn't say, take sticks and do this. But the commandments from after giving the Torah, in zich, they have in themselves the power from the essence of God, not just the spiritual aspect of God. Was is nit mugda, which God is not limited, and any sort of limitations from above or below. So therefore, even in the lowest levels of the world, God can reveal himself, like we said, in the holy temple. Therefore, by means of this, can be unified spiritual with physical, the Torah. As we'll continue, God willing, tomorrow. Have a good day with Moshiach. Now, thank you very much for tuning in, and join the class tomorrow at 8:15 in the morning, Israeli time. Shalom.